Galactic sentient broadcast. Target, planet Earth. Begin invasion in 3, 2, 1.
Greetings, invaders. My name is Scott. Today we're going to be kind of defining what is science fiction, and I'm going to kind of go through some articles that I found, some research. Let's talk about sci-fi in the terms of books and the imagination, and then at the end I'll probably give you some recommendations of maybe beginning sci-fi books about different aspects of things that I don't think take the genre to the extreme, that I think are accessible and digestible for any and all readers. So I'm going to be reading some notes over here and quoting some articles that I found about what is science fiction. According to the University of Kansas Gun Center for the Study of Science Fiction says, science fiction is the literature of the human species encountering change, whether it arrives via scientific discoveries, technological innovations, natural events, or societal shifts. Which is true, because sci-fi, in the terms of Handmaid's Tale and things like that, societal shifts also it doesn't focus on the science or the technology, but society as a whole, because the entity of society kind of plays a big role in a lot of these sci-fi stories, and the society that these stories take place in is as much as the story as the technology and the very specific details of that technology. So the society that surrounds all of these sci-fi stories is as much of the story as anything. Here's another article from the stargarden.co.uk about why society needs science fiction, and this is good. While there's no single accepted definition of science fiction usually deals with words that differ from our own as the result of new scientific discoveries, new technologies, or different social systems. Again, it goes back to the discoveries, technology, and societal things. It then looks at the consequences of this change. Because of this broad definition, science fiction can be used to consider questions regarding science, politics, sociology, and the philosophy of the mind, as well as any questions about the future. So it's versatile enough to cover that broad spectrum. And a lot of, there are scenarios of other genres doing things like that, but it covers more of a broad spectrum. You're not just dealing with a specific aspect as far as fantasy, romance, things like that. Science fiction covers the discovery, the philosophy of the mind, asking and answering those questions about the future. Science fiction is the literature of ideas and philosophy, answering such questions as what if, or if this goes on, ... It explores possibilities and pushes boundaries. It asks the next question, and then the one after that. It is often epistemological, seeking to understand how we know things, ontological, metaphysical, cosmological. It is concerned with all of us rather than individuals, and with how we got to be what we are and what we might become. Which is the appeal for me, I think, as a science fiction fan, is it covers those speculative questions. Is if this goes on, if technology takes another step forward, or if we embrace the technology that we have and somebody comes out with some kind of outrageous thing, what's going to happen if this continues? What's going to happen if this goes on? Those are kind of the things that most capture my attention when I'm reading these things. And whether it's some outlandish thing or in space travel or whatnot, or if it's something that's kind of a little bit more realistic and just a little bit of tweak of reality, exploring those ideas and how they will evolve and how that changes society. Those are the things that kind of interest me the most about science fiction. Science fiction is also the literature of the other, providing alternate points of view on familiar topics in order to give us a clearer perspective. Science fiction is a community of thinkers and creatives. So yeah, oftentimes in science fiction we have the perspective of the outsider, of the other. Sometimes it's an alien species or just an alien race or whatnot. So you do capture that reflection of humanity and that reflection of us as seen from someone who is outside of our species or culture, so to speak. Let me read you a couple more paragraphs and then I'll get into some recommendations. Here's one. Science fiction at its best engenders the sort of flexible thinking that not only inspires us but compels us to consider the myriad potential consequences of our actions. Samuel Delany, one of the most wide-ranging and masterful writers in the field, sees it as a countermeasure to the future shock that will become more intense with the passing years. The variety of worlds science fiction accustoms us to through imagination is training for thinking about the actual changes, sometimes catastrophes, often confusing, that real world funnels at us year after year. It helps us avoid feeling quite so gobsmacked. So there was, this will be a future discussion, I think, about the importance of science fiction. And there's some other articles that I've pulled about the benefit of science fiction, reading it, and how that prepares our mind for these kind of global catastrophes and, you know, these pandemics, so to speak, or whatever you can imagine. If you've kind of dwelled in those stories about those situations, you're not as afraid of them, I should say. You're more prepared mentally for that kind of thing. Any movie or like, you know, zombie invasion thing like that, like if that really if that really happens, you know, we would reference those movies just like in the Scream movies. If there's a horror film and it's happening to them, they know the rules and they kind of go through the motions and whatever. But if an alien contact were to come to us tomorrow, it would kind of quickly separate the sci-fi fans from the non-sci-fi fans, as far as like people will be rushing to greet this and other people will be rushing away in fear for their lives. Other people think it's cool. And it's kind of a matter of keeping your head in that situation where you're not going crazy, because you've kind of been through the scenario a number of times in different worlds through these books. So here's an article from Forbes, author Max Gladstone. He says, the easy and my opinion, mostly wrong answer is that science fiction and fantasy both expand our imagination and plant the seeds of great advances. But I think it's pretty arrogant of the genre to claim those advances for itself. People dream and yearn and experiment regardless of what genre of fiction they read growing up. The real power of science fiction and fantasy, for me, lie in their use as tools to interpret the world around us, which is good, and investigate aspects of our life that are too complex, too implicit, too subtle to tease out with the limited tool set of realistic fiction. Which I think is a good point. It's not that science fiction is claiming to be the greatest and best genre and it's the one that expands your mind the most. No, that's not appropriate or fair to claim that. However, it's twisting the world around us and interpreting those little things that we may see as a little too complex, too implicit, but sci-fi kind of puts a magnifying glass on those things and just blows it up to proportions that can be outlandish and crazy. So those are all different definitions and perspectives of what science fiction is, kind of what it does, how it explores the politics, societal, philosophical, technological aspects of society as a whole and how that shifts society. That's the definition that I would kind of agree with in a loose term, and that's kind of what draws me into that, into the genre. So it's not about the spaceships and the faster than light travel and the pew pew ray guns and the space battles and that kind of thing. It's more about how humanity adapts to these changes, whether it be, you know, any type of crazy changes with innovations, inventions, or reaching to other galaxies and other planets. How does the human aspect of that shift in the story? That's kind of where the appeal is for me. And if you kind of like that, I'm going to give you some recommendations of different kind of stories based in categories. So here we go. So if you want something for time travel and alternate universes, which doesn't get incredibly crazy on the mathematics, I would recommend Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. If you haven't heard of that already, that's a great book. And another one that's more kind of a literary fiction is All Our Wrong Todays by Elon Mastai, which was kind of a twisty tale about time travel, but it doesn't get caught up in the technology, but more of the humanity and the personality of things. If you want some kind of mind-twisting kind of thing, then check out the Book of M by Peng Shepherd. People lose their shadows, and with their shadows, they lose their memories, and their imagination kind of takes over. Or The Oracle Year by Charles Sewell. The Oracle Year is where a man kind of wakes up one day and he can predict future events. If you want something with more of a realistic future with a technological twist on it, that innovation gone wrong, check out The Circle by Dave Eggers. That was also turned into a film with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks. The Warehouse by Rob Hart, which was a really good one about like a global corporation a la Amazon that gets a little bit too big. I would check out 1 Second After by William Forstchen. That's about an EMP attacking the globe, so power is lost throughout everything. And this is the immediate moments after that happening, and it follows this family in this kind of town and how they cope with that. The other one I would recommend is Quality Land by Marc-Uwe Kling, which is the one that I read recently, which is more of a humorous take on algorithms and shopping and personality traits that are boiled down into metrics in a crazy society where technology has just gotten out of hand. That one was really funny. If you want some kind of light space opera kind of things, I would recommend The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley. It's more of a military sci-fi thing. Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe by Alex White. That one has a lot of representation, so to speak, and it's kind of action-packed, but yet has a good found family kind of heartwarming feel to it. Old Man's War by John Scalzi, which is kind of a classic, and it kind of boils down the technology into something that's easily digestible. Murderbot series by Martha Wells, and the other one is Beacon 23 by Hugh Howey, which is a good kind of sci-fi thing. It has a protagonist there dealing with some PTSD who lives in this, quote, lighthouse, which is a kind of space beacon to guide ships through, and how he deals with his isolation and the solitude in a kind of a post-war situation. Last one I have is for if you want something that has some cool alien contact in it, I would check out The Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, which is book one of the Themis Files trilogy. The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, if you want kind of a classic take on different tales of Martian contact. Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, which was great. Another fun one that's a little bit lighthearted is Agent to the Stars by John Scalzi. That one takes a first contact into, back then it was kind of a modern day Hollywood, and how they finagle integrating the aliens with humanity in a Hollywood type setting. The other one is The Humans, finally, by Matt Haig. And Humans is about a mathematics professor who's about to crack a mathematics problem to advance innovation on Earth to a little bit further than comfortable situation. And so a being inhabits this professor, and it learns how to kind of become human and thwart this thing. But the professor is married with kids and has a job, and the alien kind of has to fit into that mold, and he learns about humans, which is really interesting. So that's all I got. So that's just a feeling about science fiction, how it plays a role within more than just ray guns and over explaining technology and over explaining space travel. Science fiction is, I gravitate myself towards more of the down-to-earth sci-fi, where it covers about things that are happening now, but just taking a little bit of a twist. That's the thing I think I like to gravitate towards, and I hope you do too. So check out the recommendations. I'll link them down below. If you want more sci-fi talks, there'll probably be another video and more of these videos coming, where we kind of sit down and discuss science fiction, what it is, why people read it or not read it, and what the stigmas are about that, and how it can benefit us as a society. So thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.